Thanks. I try to be 50 minutes or to flip through. So the Go Hugo website, to build websites. The Go Hugo is a fantastic start. And the website, let's get to my slides. And okay, let's start with this one. Sorry. Okay, sorry. Okay, let's start from the beginning. So building a website with Go is Go Hugo is one of the biggest one. And if you build a website, usually you use a dynamic website generator, and anybody knows who are the big guys who run the internet, who run all the websites. And so the big website generators, anybody know WordPress? WordPress, Drupal, Joomla, so PHP, the most popular language on the planet. Facebook, so the rest is Facebook. So WordPress has, I think, 25% market share. So 25% of the websites on the internet are using WordPress, which might be, I think, let's say, 30 million of websites. And then Drupal and Joomla, they have maybe 2 or 3%. So there's a big gap. And of course, the rest is Facebook. So that's a joke. But a static website generator, what's the difference? So if you have a WordPress website, of course you have a database. And every time you display a website, it does database queries, it merges the templates, and on every request, it runs scripts, and so on and so forth. But if you use a static website builder, it's like if you're a Go programmer, you compile your code. So usually what I say is it's a website compiler, because you take your sources, and then you use the Go machinery, it's just a binary, and you compile your website, and you get a super fast, secure, perfect website. And so the main difference is you have no database, and you have no application server, so you don't need PHP, you don't need Java or anything, and even you can go, which is the new fashion, you can go serverless. Of course, you need a web server to serve your files for your website, but serverless means somebody else is handling your web server, Amazon, or you use a different service provider, and all you need is simple storage service. You don't need simple storage service. You just need, you have a bunch of files, and you can host it wherever. You can upload it with FTP, so it's super. And it's super fast, because a static file, by definition, you have a super cache building. If you want to make a WordPress site fast, you have to cache and cache and cache. And if you have a static website, by definition, every page is cached, and so on and so forth. So the main difference, there's no database, no application server, everything is built ahead of time. And now the question is, who are the big guys, Who are the big guys for the website compilers, builders, generators? In '99, anybody remembers Microsoft front page, Netscape Composer, or Dreamweaver? So these, you had your templates and they build your site. And so, of course, today's Hugo. So Hugo is actually the number 2. So this is from a year and a half ago. It had 10,000 stars, and now, today, I think we can check later, it has 25,000 stars. So it's growing super fast, it's popular, and it can build, because it's, and here it's old news, but the good news is the guy from Norway, he's the main developer, and he just released a new version today. So usually it gets updated, new features pretty quick, and you can expect at least, one update a month. And just 6-8 hours ago, there was a new bug fix release, and the major release was just 2 or 3 days ago. And to get started with Hugo, of course, it has a website built with Hugo, a static website, Go Hugo, and It has fantastic, and to sell it now, you know, the Go Hugo website itself now is a good marketing brochure. I just have to scroll down, you know. The features, it has everything built in. It has custom outputs, it has built-in multilingual, so you can build multilingual websites, shortcuts, and the most important feature, of course, is the super fast. And to get started, you just go to the, and also the code of Go Hugo is, of course, is Go code, and it's great code to study. It's high quality Go code. But to get started, you go to the GitHub Go Hugo website, and here you have all the code, but you don't have to use it, you don't have to use Go, but you have to download the binary. And so you go to the releases, and you see here, it was 10 hours ago, the latest release, brand new, just a bug fix, the 0.3. And then you download the, for your version. And if you have Linux or if you have Apple, you can use Brew or your package manager. So you don't have to download, you know, the package you can use. Usually it's available on Debian and on, and so forth and forth. But that is how easy it is to get started. It's just, that's the major selling point of Go, you know. If you have Go to install, you just have a binary to install, you know. If your customers, they don't have to install any, you know, machinery or something like in Node, a package manager, all is a simple binary. Okay, so let's switch back, get started. So once you install, so it's the download package you've seen, maybe 5 megabytes, and then if you unzip it, I think it's 10, the binary is 10 megabytes. And then all you Hugo help, yeah? And so, because it's on the command line, and the Hugo help command line, and it offers lots of features. It has a built-in server, and of course the most important feature is the build. Because it's a compiler, you give it the source files, and then you say build, and it builds your merges and builds your website. But for development, it has a built-in server, and also it has what's called scaffolding. You can say Hugo new, and then it builds, you know, a little blog with all ready to go. So you don't have to start from scratch. So there are different startup packages. So let's see, and let's build the simple example. I have a website that's called Stay Static, and so I collect website compilers. So every month, I build a new website which looks exactly like the website last month, but it's using a different compiler. So I have over 10 and a couple of contributions, and the exercise, it has a blog, and if you have a blog, you have the blog postings, the posts, and a blog posting has a date and it's chronological, you know, the latest news first. So that would be the 3 news, and then a page doesn't have any date, you know, your about page, your info page. So the website we are building, you know, has the about page. If I click on the about page, and then it has, even if you don't have a database, there's something called data files. You know, if you have small data sets, you don't have to put it in a database, but instead you use JSON or YAML or TOML, you know, simple or comma separate files. And these are called data files, where you have your list of stores. Or in this example, what I use, the data file, I have bookmarks. So the links, they are in a data file. And then from this source, it should build, and so they stay static, it's online on GitHub. Stay static, so that's the stay static, one design, many samples. And so there are all these Ruby, Go, and here's the Go Hugo site. It's live on GitHub. It's not, you know, there's not much. There's the about page. If I click, it doesn't have a date. And if I go back, this is the blog. And then the last one is the bookmarks. So the World Cup is upcoming, free data for the World Cup. that was the bookmark. Sorry. Okay, and so the source. Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's. Or let's go here. So that's the example to show you we're going to build. And the file structure. And they also, before starting, so they stay static on GitHub. So it has for every, it has the folder. And so the source for the Hugo, if you want to compare the different static site builders. So that's the Hugo. The source, okay, that's doing its own. That's great. So how to get started? So how do you structure your source code? You know, if you build your Go program, you have a source folder, a test folder, and so it's the same principle. If you build your website, you have layouts, and then for your layouts, these are the HTML templates. And if you have a layout, a master layout, or some page layouts, then you also usually would want building blocks for your layouts, for your footer, header. These are called the partials. And then, of course, the most important part is your content. You have your news blog postings, and you have your, you know, about info page, and you have the configuration, and then you have the styling for the design. And that's the Hugo's file structure. So it's pretty, what's great about the Hugo file structure is the content. So they try to keep, you know, that's a good principle, to keep your content, your pages separate from your layout and from your styling. So yeah, so then let's get started for now the quick port. Okay. 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 So how does it look like to create a new blog posting? To create a new blog posting, you know, it's a HTML page, but of course you don't want to write HTML. And anybody not using Markdown, or, you know, there is something called, you can use text, normal text, and with some formatting convention that automatically gets converted to HTML with 100% accuracy. And the rules are all simple. So if you use a link, or a link is a little more complex, but anyway, so this gets, if you do a paragraph, all you have to do is you have to add a blank line, you know? And then the Markdown knows this is a paragraph. So it's very intuitive. And the important part, if you use these static site builders, usually they all have the same principle. They have what's called a front meta, and the front meta is the metadata, which in this case is the first block. And the Go Hugo is using something called TOML, for Tom's obvious markup language. It's kind of a better version than JSON. Anybody knows JSON? So the problem, what's the problem with JSON? The problem with JSON is you don't have comments, and it's kind of not really for hand coding. You know, you want a data file format that's easy for hand coding. And here the candidates are the YAML. But YAML has lots of features, so it gets complex if you do. And so the Tom's obvious markup language, basically in this case you see they are just key value pairs. You have the title and the date, and the separator are these plus, plus, plus. So you know that's the, but here you can, it's a free form, you can add your own keywords as you like. And so that's easy to write. And the Markdown madness, so Go has great libraries, but there's no official standard Markdown library for Go from Google. But there's a fantastic library. The Go Hugo is using Black Friday. And so Black Friday, okay, maybe I skip, and it has lots of extension, but Black Friday, why is it called Black Friday? Because Markdown, if you go to a shop, and if it's cheap, 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 you know, that's called Markdown. So that's a different sense, but also Markdown is, you know, is the difference markup, Markdown. But usually, you know, if you want to make big money, you put a big markup on if you sell it, you know. And if you have a sales, And so the Black Friday is, the big sales. So that's kind of an in-joke for the name for the Markdown madness. But this is a grid library, and the grid library is, there's basic Markdown, but then there is always extension. So the Black Friday Markdown extension, you have tables, in HTML are tables, so you can do tables, you can use code blocks, footnotes, smart quotes, fractions for typography, and I just skip over them. But if you want to use a table, that's how is the table. And if you would to have to hand code it in HTML, it's way easier, just to use the pipe for your table, and you get a perfect HTML table. And if all are using GitHub, that was an invention from GitHub, the fence code block, It sounds fancy, the fence code block, but all it does is 3 backticks. And you have 3 backticks to begin and the 3 backticks for the ending. And then it knows this is a pre-formatted code block. It even gets syntax highlighting. Okay. And so I skip over all these, definition lists. So all the HTML goodies, you can do in text. But now let's, before the important part, the HTML templates, the data file for the bookmark. And so Hugo is using this TOML. And if you have a data file in JSON, you would just have a hash with the entries. And here the convention is if I want to have a hash with 3 entries, or in this an array, you have to use the double brackets. And then it gives you, it just gives you a list with the links, and every link has a title and a URL, But you can make it up as you like. And now the important part, how do you use it in your templates? And so the good news is, or that's the bad news if you're a JavaScript programmer. So what's the downside? There are all these website builders. So what's the big downside of the Go Hugo? The big downside for if you don't know Go, the template language is the Go template language, And if you're a web designer and have no clue about Go, then that's the major, holdback for not using the super fast Hugo, because the template language is the Go language and the Go template language. But if you're a Go programmer, that's paradise, because your template language is not something new or something, but it's the official Go template language. And so all we do, if you remember, we want to do the to show all the links. And then it just gives the data file, and the convention is the name of the file. It's called links, and then site data, And then you can just loop over with the range. That's the classic Go, and then you build your web, the building block for the web. And the other example shows you the loop for looping over the news block. So in this case, it has the site pages. It gives you all the pages, which are the about page plus the news pages. And you have to use the type. And then if I select by type, I only get my blog postings. And then, I have the list of blog postings, which, that's how you build the index page. And the next part is if you have your master template, you want to have building blocks, not everything in a single file, but you can just include, in this case, it's the master template, and I use partial. And the partial is just, to include the header, the footer, and the head for the HTML page. And the content, the magic content is the placeholder, where everything, if you have a page, everything gets merged in here. And that's the surrounding, and it gets merged together. But it's just, so the template language has the includes. And that was what I was telling you, the template options in Go. It's the official, it's an official text template package, and it has all the documentation in the library. And to make it secure, there is the HTML template package. But the only difference for the HTML template package, it's like the text template package, but it has protection against injection attacks, or that you cannot inject JavaScript, so it escapes this stuff. But it's the same part. And the great news, In Go 1.6, they added to the template package, they added blocks. Blocks are the building blocks, small building blocks. So that's usually, if you look at other template languages, a famous one is Django, for example. That's pretty popular for designers. Then usually you can, if you have your site, you split it up in this block is the news block, you know. And so the Go template language also now has this, you can use the blocks. Your main blocks, or in this case, you know, you have the title block and so forth. So you can give everything. And an important part is short codes, because one downside of the Go Hugo is it's not a scripting language. If you use a JavaScript or Ruby, Python, and you have a website builder, you can extend it with your own plugins, you know, and you just script it. But in Go Hugo, you know, how do you extend it? It's hard to extend, you know. You have to Go code and you have to create a new binary, so that's a downside. And so what they're doing is, if you want to have a small macro, or you want to own your small script, you can do HTML short codes, you know. And one example is, you want to add to your website a YouTube video, and you don't want to, you know, all this HTML magic, you want to put, you know, in a magic YouTube tab. And so all you can do, you use this HTML shortcodes that are supported by Go Hugo, and you can build, you say YouTube, and the macro, that's the macro source, which the macro source, of course, is using the Go template, and then that's what gets generated. And another example is, let's say you have a figure, you know, a figure is, you know, an image with a title and all this stuff, and that's how complex it can look, you know. With your shortcuts, you can really, you know, be very creative, and so it's more fun to use than to build all this. And I'm not sure anybody using. It even supports alternative template languages. I'm not a big fan of these shortcuts, but I think the two supported ones are Ace of Base and Ember. But they, you know, the HTML is Python style indented, and then you don't have to do the closing, you know, the body is just the indented like Python. So white space is very significant. It makes it shorter, and the attributes, you know, they have these shortcuts. But it's kind of, I think usually it's 30% or 20% like this style, but the majority usually is like, oh, I don't need this. Okay, and to configure, to wrap up, you know, the configuration, there's not lots of configuration, but you put your configuration again, it's using the TOML, and that the TOML is started if the Windows INI format or the Git configuration format. That's the same thing, only that it has a specification and it has lists and everything. That's the idea of the TOML, obvious markup language. But it's just, you know, key value for the simple one. You have the title, the language code, in this case a base URL, because this example is hosted not on the main domain, but is a subdomain mini site. And so you can say the base URL, and then to every link it adds the base URL. And to sum up, for the Hugo, now it has 25,000 stars. And I'm not making up. There's like the top 10 or the top 100 static site generators, staticsite.com. And the number 2, the big one, the WordPress of the universe, is Jekyll in Ruby, supported by GitHub. But you see, Hugo is number 1, 25,000. So that's a good choice, and it's super popular. Hugo can do, I think it builds 500 pages a second, and Jekyll, I think, might get 20 pages, so it's like 10, 15, 20 times as fast as Jekyll at least. So it's, if you have a big site with thousands of pages, you know, you can build it super fast. With And so you've seen the configuration is in TOML, the front metadata, also this simple format. The data files, for the data files you can also, and also for the front meta you can use, if you want, you can use JSON and YAML and all this stuff. And an important part, the CSS pre-processing, the professional, they are calling the asset pipeline. You know, if you want to minimize your JavaScript or to convert JavaScript 6 to JavaScript 7 and all this stuff, or the CSS to, and so forth. This is called the asset pipeline. So there's no built-in asset pipeline in Go Hugo. And what is the solution? The solution is they tell you should install Node.js, you know. You install Node.js and then you install, it's a huge universe, you know, you pick whatever is the fashion. And but what's fantastic, what's now built in, they have built in the new version in Go, they have built in image processing pipeline. Because, you know, if you build a website, usually you have an image and then there are different resolutions. And so if you have an image, you want to have automatically have different resolution sizes for the image. And now this is already built into the Go Hugo. So it can do, you know, if you give it an image, it does reformatting that you have 5, 6, 7 different formats. So this pipeline is built in. But for the CSS and JavaScript pipeline, you have to use Node.js, which is kind of a trick, because then it's one feature is it's easy to install. But now if you're using this, you know, you have to install the. So that was the demo. You have seen the website. Oh, and the important part, how it works, you know, once you Hugo build, what you get is the static website. The master layout, it all gets merged together. And then you see it's the about page, you know, it's just your HTML. And so that's the great part about the static. You don't need a database, you don't need an application server with PHP, with Java or anything. It's just plain, you know, plain files. You can upload, and they work in 200 years. It still works, you know. You have WordPress, you have to update every 3 months. You get the security update. If you don't update, you get hacked. How do you hack this, you know, static HTML? It's impossible to hack. And so it's just, and to go live, that's another part. There are hundreds of options, free option. You can free hosting on GitHub for Hugo too. It's not built in, so you have to upload you build it and you upload the HTML. And Git push, GitLab Pages. GitLab Pages has support for Hugo, the search, Google Firebase, Amazon S3, and thousands of options. And and why you would use static instead of dynamic. So the one thing is faster. There's nothing faster if it's a simple website. And also it's simple, you know, if you can handle HTML. And the other one is prettiest. You are in control to build your own template, you know. You can start from scratch or you can copy, but there's no, you know, the framework doesn't put much in your stuff. You know, if you do a WordPress template, then you have lots of documentation and it might be a big monster. But here, you know, you can be pretty minimal, do it yourself. That's also the downside, you know. Who wants to design their own template themes? And there's the good news is you can reuse. So there are so there are the themes. And these are open source themes on GitHub, and I think there are more than 100 different themes, you know. And if you keep your content separate from your themes, you can just change the theme name, rebuild, and you have a new look. So there are all 100 different already, let's see. And another, maybe if you have a blog and you really want to have comments, so how do you comment with a static site? The solution, of course, is serverless. You outsource it. And so there are lots of different, the Discuss is the most famous. You just add a tiny JavaScript, and then you have the comments added. But they're different, you know, you can do it yourself, or you go serverless with your own a little service. Yeah. So that would be and yeah, the important part, it has fantastic, to get started, there's a great documentation. So the Go Hugo documentation, and of course this is a Go Hugo website. The website is built with Hugo itself, and it's extremely well documented. So